Jews' homeland. And Jews have always lived there. You can look it up. It's in this book called the Bible. It says the Jews built a temple with a really big wall 7 centuries before Muhammad or Islam ever existed. And sure as shit, you can still go there and touch it. Calling Jews colonizers in Israel is like calling Native Americans colonizers here. It's ridiculous. To mark the October 7th, I guarantee that the side of the country that voted for Trump, they hear Nazi and they just go, oh, you're calling us Nazis? First of all, it's a bit of a false premise, as bad as they are. And also, it just says to them, well, you just hate us. And one thing I've learned in recent years is that the one thing that's more powerful than money is hate. You have the court, you don't have the Senate, you lost the House, you lost everything. You lost everything with your stupid boutique issues and your insistence that Joe Biden was a handsome young triathlete who was completely capable.
A wave of shock hit the airwaves as Bill Maher, once celebrated as a staunch leftist voice, delivered a scathing takedown of the progressive narrative, live on TV. In a bold and unexpected moment, the legendary comedian and host openly challenged his woke guest, dismantling their talking points with sharp wit and unflinching honesty. Maher didn't hold back, systematically debunking the modern left's agenda and, in a twist that stunned viewers, even expressed a surprising level of respect for Donald Trump. It was one of Maher's most relentless reality checks to date. Raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore.
The Supreme Court is hearing about the case in Maryland about a couple of religious people. It's really a religious-based case. They do not want trans books that teach kids that some people are trans in the schools. And here's Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She's quoting from one of the books. When we're born, people make a guess about our gender and label us boy or a girl based on our body parts. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Now, I think that's bullshit. Okay? No, they're almost always right. If you have a dick, you're almost always a boy. I think it's okay to teach kids, there's a default setting for humans, and if you're not part of that default setting, it doesn't make you a worse person. These things happen. I mean, it's on the right. They don't even believe that trans is a thing. It is a thing, but it's not a thing that happens like this, where, well, we don't know, jump wall, every baby's a chicken. And even Elena Kagan, one of the most liberal judges, said, I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who also weren't all that thrilled about this. This is the kind of issue, it's one of those 80-20 issues that the Democrats have been on the wrong.
Exactly, and this isn't the first time the woke crowd has fumbled a major issue like this. They have a habit of doubling down on the very ideas that cost them support in the first place. Let's be honest, no matter how much truth Bill Maher puts on the table, the Democrats aren't likely to listen. But the best part? Bill Maher isn't the kind to back down or stay quiet. He's going to keep calling it like he sees it, whether they like it or not.
And hear over and over again the assertion of complete inaccuracies that Ukraine is responsible for starting the war with Russia. There's so many of them, and they keep asserting these things, expecting us to believe that the climate crisis is a hoax invented by the Chinese, that windmills cause cancer, that coal is clean, and they try to assert with the force of power their own special version of alternative facts.
Yeah, but I guarantee that the side of the country that voted for Trump, they hear Nazi and they just go, oh, you're calling us Nazis? First of all, it's a bit of a false premise, as bad as they are. And also, it just says to them, well, you just hate us. And one thing I've learned in recent years is that the one thing that's more powerful than money is hate. When people hate you so much, and when they think you hate them so much, even the money goes out the window. Well, not that I think Trump is going to survive if he takes the economy down, but this idea that, well, just to take a random example, you can't even break bread with them. we hate you so much. That
Well,
you're not even,
look, I
you're
know that
deplorable and you're not worth having dinner with.
I know that you've been attacked on this, and
What?
Yeah. Has anybody heard anything about that?
Let's not forget, this is the same guy who predicted the ice caps would melt within 10 years, 2 decades ago. After years of consistently off-base climate warnings, it's hard to understand why anyone still takes him seriously. Listening to him now feels like watching a more unhinged version of Howard Dean, only with a worse temper. At this point, it's honestly just embarrassing.
Jews' homeland, and Jews have always lived there. You can look it up. It's in this book called the Bible. It says the Jews built a temple with a really big wall 7 centuries before Muhammad or Islam ever existed, and sure as shit, you can still go there and touch it. Calling Jews colonizers in Israel is like calling Native Americans colonizers here. It's ridiculous. To mark the October 7th anniversary, we must launch a campaign to educate young Americans about the Middle East. And the way I'd like to begin that process is by addressing an open letter to Chapel Roan, a great new recording artist who, like a Hezbollah pager, is really blowing up. Chapel, if you think it was repressive growing up queer in the Midwest, try the Mideast. Chapel, did you know that for 2,000 years, Palestine was like an Uber driver with a 3-star rating? Nobody wanted it. And there was never any Arab country called Palestine. Chapel, you're not wrong that oppression is bad, or that Palestinian and many other Muslim populations are oppressed and deserve to be freed. You just have it completely ass backwards as to who is doing the oppressing. Hamas is a terrorist mafia that took over Gaza. These are the oppressors. And when you make it all about Israel, you take the pressure off of them. You enable them. Gender may not be binary, but right and wrong kind of is.
Once again, this is a textbook example of another 2080 issue the Democrats have fumbled. At this point, it's not just about losing, it's about the disconnect between how they present themselves and what they're actually doing. They keep posing, as compassionate leaders while pushing an agenda that's quietly unraveling the fabric of the country. And now, Bill Maher is calling it out loud and clear, shining a light on the very things they'd rather keep hidden.
And to think that the best thing you can do when you have absolutely no power is to ignore the people who have all of it is straight up delusional.
I mean, you can't go a day without thinking about what he's done to this country, because he's such a little baby that he's thrown 250 years of democracy out the window by not accepting the results of the... I mean, it's so crazy. He's such a sociopath. He's so insane. He just couldn't admit to losing. And we know he lost. He knows he lost. And look how he's fooled everybody. He's convinced all these people that he didn't lose. He's such a sick man. He's so sick. Anyway, no, it hasn't impacted me at all.
At this point, they've lost all credibility to criticize Trump. If anyone's truly out of touch, it's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Just take one look at Biden. He looks more lost and exhausted than ever. Practically a walking case of TDS. And it only gets worse. Wait until you see the next clip. A complete meltdown as a guest on Bill Maher's show unravels in real time. It's absolute chaos proof of what happens when reality finally catches up with the narrative.
100 days is that the bad news is it's the worst first 100 days in U.S. presidential history. I can't think of a presidency that had it worse. But the good news, I think, for the country is it's the worst first 100 days in U.S. presidential history. For precisely the reason that you suggest, Bill, which is that a lot of the country that voted for President Trump because they didn't like the course of the country under his predecessor, because they were mad, because they thought stuff needed to be broken up and disrupted, are waking up to the reality of just how much worse it can get. And I'm hearing from so many friends who voted for Trump, who remember the first Trump administration as being in Europe, at least until COVID, of prosperity, and saying, hang on a second, 100% tariffs, I'm losing half of my workforce, I can't afford things, the price of consumer goods is still going up. This is not what I voted for. And that's a relief, because if it had been a successful first 100 days, if it had been just a little less bad, people would say, well, what's the problem if we're not observing due process? Or what's the problem if we're defying the Supreme Court? That would be even more worrisome than what we have now.
As he talks, it's obvious is just spinning nonsense. But here's the so-called good news he tries to push: that Trump's presidency has been such a disaster, he's supposedly losing support from his own base. Of course, anyone with a shred of common sense can see right through it. It's just another desperate attempt to twist the narrative, while the real story on the ground tells a very different truth.
Talk about Trump voters and how they feel. Do they regret their vote?
I mean, this is the big question, right? I hear all these stories, all these articles, all the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024, we got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then there's this additional 1% who's...
And that's the wildest part. It's their own media that's beginning to pull back the curtain. After years of pushing a carefully crafted narrative filled with spin, hypocrisy, and manipulation, the cracks are finally showing. Now, even their once-loyal voices are starting to expose the truth, and the entire facade is collapsing right in front of them.